Welcome back, dear listeners, to a very special episode of Cults, Crimes, and Spirits. I'm Nina.
And I'm Andrea.
So picture this, a cool autumn evening,
My
a
favorite.
charming historic town,
Cute.
and a date night to remember.
Yup, in today's episode, we are sharing with you how to have the perfect spooky date night in our Halloween special.
It will be hauntingly romantic. Dinner at a haunted restaurant, followed by a play at the historic and very haunted Barter Theatre, and then retire for the evening at a ghostly inn directly across the street. All three haunted locations are within walking distance of each other.
You won't even need an Uber.
We even have a special guest joining us later to share some spooky stories surrounding one of the locations.
So get yourself ready for a spooky good time.
When you walk the streets of our hometown of Abingdon, Virginia, there is historic charm in every direction. It is also extremely haunted.
Yeah, and since it is spooky season and our favorite holiday is upon us, we wanted to share with you how you can have the best spooky day ever.
But it doesn't have to be Halloween or spooky season to enjoy the locations we're about to mention, as they are very much haunted all year, all the time, any time of the year.
365. Ghosts still flying.
Yeah.
Well, the first stop for your perfect spooky date night should be the tavern. It is the oldest historic building in Abingdon, built in 1779.
From the start, the tavern was an overnight inn for travelers, even seeing the likes of presidents and kings.
Yeah, President Andrew Jackson and former King of France Louis Philippe.
Words.
The King of France, Louis Philippe, are said to have been former guests at the tavern.
In the many years the tavern has been in operation, the tavern has served as a post office, the first actually in the area, and the original mail slot is still there and can be seen from the street. It was
dope.
A bank, a general store, a bakery, a cabinet shop, barber shop, antique shop, a private residence, and a restaurant. It also briefly served as a hospital during the Civil War.
Super haunted. All that, so haunted.
The tavern today is a restaurant and has been for many years. It is currently being run by Josh Fuller, and they serve up some appetizing dishes, like the stuffed filet mignon, crab cakes, and they even have a Sunday brunch menu, complete with dishes like steak and eggs, creme French toast, and cherry dark chocolate waffles. I mean, come on.
So we have to eat here. I'm hungry.
Yes. And there's Ghost, so hello.
Yes.
Perfect place to go for your spooky date night.
But delicious food is not all they offer. Diners, like you said, might also experience one of their many ghosts, including the most famous one, referred to as the Tavern Tart.
I love that name. It's like, what?
It makes me a little hungry. I want a tart now. Like one of those.
I know, but this one
fruit ones
isn't on the menu.
Yeah. Maybe looking at the menu with you, but not on it.
They should add a dish called the Tavern Tart just in honor of the Tavern Tart.
Yes, for real. They should. Yeah. I would eat it.
I don't know.
As a dessert.
Maybe they do, but I didn't see it right
that
off.
Much.
But
yeah.
Well, now we're going to learn about this Tavern Tart.
All right.
Because you see, back in the day, the tavern was also briefly a brothel.
Okay.
And, well, there was an unnamed lady of the evening, and according to the Haint Mistress, Donna Marie Emmert of Abingdon Spirit Tours, the story goes, One day, 3 men rode into town, and that said lady of the evening, and one of those 3 men went upstairs to negotiate, and the other 2 men stayed downstairs and had drinks at the bar. Well, eventually, they heard a woman scream, and everyone ran upstairs to see what was happening, and they found the lady of the evening with her throat slit lying on the floor.
What?
With her last words, she was able to mutter the name of the man, the same man that she went upstairs with. Everyone began searching the property for that man. They searched everywhere, but they were never able to find him, even though no one ever saw him leave. That's kind of spooky,
weird.
too. And the lady of the evening is now said to still roam the tavern, and she likes men. Go figure. Not much has changed. And according to reports, a lot of men occasionally get touched by who they believe is the tavern tart. But she doesn't like women, especially for some reason, pregnant women.
Yeah, that's messed up.
And yeah, women have reported being pushed and even having things thrown at them. Yeah, so
Rude.
I mean, just be careful if you go to the tavern, if you're a woman. It is also reported that the tavern tart's ghostly apparition can sometimes be seen looking out the second floor window around 2 a.m. Not sure why 2 a.m. Maybe that's when she died. I don't know, but
weird.
There you go.
Spooky.
I kind of want to drive by there at like 2 a.m. just to see.
You would do that.
Yeah, I would. I so would.
So that's spooky, but it is said that the most active ghost at the tavern is to be that of Captain Gordon William Rife. Allegedly, Rife was caught cheating at the tavern with a married woman.
Ooh.
So the woman's husband,
Naughty.
Yeah, who is obviously angry, very angry, shot and killed Rife, and now Rife's spirit still is just hanging around.
Well,
so
don't mess with a married woman.
Yeah, don't do that. But supposedly another man was also shot and killed at the tavern after being caught cheating at poker, which they don't play about poker.
No. There was a lot of cheating going on at the tavern.
Be careful at your first stop.
Especially if you're a woman. I would still go on this
I still want to eat there.
I will deal with stuff getting thrown at me if the food's good. And it is. It is very good at the tavern.
Yeah.
Great.
I mean, stuffed filet mignon, sign me up.
Yes. Now, after you've had your meal, if you're not in a food coma, you can walk not too far up the street to the next spooky location to catch a play at the famous Barter Theatre. People come from all over the world just to go to the Barter Theatre. It really is world renowned. The Barter is also home to some very famous alumni like actor Gregory Peck, actress Frances Fisher, and James Burrows, the creator and writer of Cheers, writer of Friends, and producer and writer of Will and Grace and Frasier. I love Will and Grace. It's like one of my all-time favorite shows.
But the Barter is also rumored to be home to several ghosts. But of course, no historic old theater would be complete without their resident ghosts. And growing up in Abingdon, we always heard the Barter Theatre was very haunted.
Yes.
So, we invited a very special guest to join us on the podcast today to discuss this haunting matter.
So, we are now joined with Katy Brown, the producing artistic director at the Barter Theatre. And Katy, we want to know, is the Barter Theatre really haunted?
The short answer is yes. Like any self-respecting theater, Barter Theatre has delightful ghosts that live in and around it.
So what can you tell us? I don't know a whole lot about the haunted history of the Barter, but I do know that there's this tunnel that connects between the Barter Theatre and the Martha, or it used to connect before it was closed off.
That's right. So if you take a tour of Barter Theatre and you go down into the basement, you go past the dressing rooms, you go down through the wardrobe room, you will get to this one closed off space. And it has a door in it that if you open, there is an earthen tunnel that disappears up into the gloom. That tunnel used to connect Barter Theatre to the Martha Washington Inn. Now, at the time that the tunnel was there, it was still the Martha Washington School for Girls, and across the street was the Abingdon Opera House that had been a Presbyterian church. The tunnel was dug during the Civil War. It was dug for gun running. So the Martha Washington had been declared a hospital, so it couldn't be burned. It and one floor of it was a hospital, and all the rest of it was guns and ammunition. And they would smuggle the guns and ammunition underneath Main Street, underneath the street, and over to the building that is now Barter Theatre, and then out to the soldiers from there. And they had a pretty successful gun running operation. And then when the Northern Army captured Abingdon, the two soldiers that did most of the gun running were captured and were actually shot and killed down in the tunnel. And apparently fairly happily haunted both sides for a long time until the 1890s. They were doing a big renovation or an upgrade on Main Street, which runs over top of that tunnel, and the tunnel caved in. One ghost got stuck on Martha's side, one ghost got stuck on our side, and that's when ours got really unhappy, apparently.
Oh no.
Yeah. The story is, or what people say happens, is that when you feel that ghost, the temperature in the room will plummet and you will get a terrible feeling. You won't see anything, but a feeling horrible enough that has sent people running out of the building and refusing to come back in. So that is the thing when ghost tours come or ghost television shows, even without us telling them, that is the room that they always get very excited about, and their equipment responds to the room that they want to spend the night in, and look for ghost activity.
That makes sense. The normal person would run out and never come back in, but then people who love paranormal is like, hey, we want to stay the night.
This is the place right here.
Yes.
Yeah. And you all actually do historical tours, right? Where you tour that area of the theater?
That's right. Yeah. When you come to the theater, you can get a tour where we talk about all the history of the building, show all the things that happen backstage in a show, and then also talk about the ghosts in the building.
That's awesome. We got to do that.
That sounds
sometime.
really fun. Yes, I would love to do that.
So, what have you experienced personally at the Barter Theatre?
Yes. So one of the things I sort of experienced peripherally when I first got to Barter, I was an intern, and then I danced and acted in some shows. And my second summer, I was the little tiny dancer on the end of a big group of dancers in a show. And they had told us when I first got to Barter that Robert Porterfield, who was the founder of the theater, would be up in the box seats of the theater, and he would look down on the stage. And there was this one area there where he would always be. He always wore a white 3-piece suit, and they had not told this new group about the ghost. And after opening night, the dancer who was next to me, she said, I was so distracted during the show. There was this guy who kept walking around up in the boxes. And I said, I didn't see anybody. What did you see? And she said he was so distracting because he was wearing all white and he kept walking around over there. And she pointed up at the box seats where he was always said to be. So I have always hoped that was Robert Porterfield looking out over us and making sure everything's okay.
That'd be so sweet. I hope
Yes.
so too.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's really cool that he's still there.
Yes, yeah. And, he founded the theater. He was one of the very first people to found a theater outside of a big city, and established us as the trading theater because it was the Great Depression. He had a farm down here, but he was on Broadway, up doing Broadway shows at the time. And he and his friends couldn't get a lot of work because of the Depression. So he said, let's go down to Abingdon, Virginia. There's an empty opera house there. And we can't necessarily make a lot of money, but there are farmers that will trade food. So they established the bartering theater. You could trade 35 cents or the equivalent in what they called victuals to see a show. So the first summer they made less than $5, but there was a collective weight gain of over 350 pounds among the actors, and they decided it was a great big success, and that's why we're called Barter Theatre. So it means a lot to us that he's still around with us.
That's a really cool story. That's a cool way to get a name for a theater as well.
So I read this somewhere, and I'm not for sure, but was the Barter Theatre, like, was there ever a prison at the bottom of the theater?
That's right. Yes, good research. So, directly underneath the stage, when Robert Porterfield first got there, there was still a lot of things going on in the building. And one of the things was that they had the jail directly under where the stage was. So you can actually go back and read reviews from back in the 30s, and they will say, wow, that show was really fantastic, but the prisoners wrecked the kissing scene again. So they would wait for the kissing scenes, and then they would throw things up at the ceiling, which was the floor of the stage, and try to make as much sound as they could to wreck what was happening on stage. I don't think there were any ghosts involved, but there were some really rowdy prisoners.
Yeah. That's pretty crazy. That would be distracting.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes.
So I'm actually really good friends with Robert Porterfield's grandson.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah. I was asking him if he could remember hearing any ghost stories about the Barter growing up, and he said he remembered something about a light backstage, but he couldn't remember the story. And I told him that we were going to be interviewing you, and he wanted me to ask you about that.
That's right. A lot of theaters have what we call ghost lights. Essentially, when you go into the space, it's never completely pitch black. Part of it is because theaters don't have any windows, and you keep everything really dark for the stage lighting. And so when you go in, you don't want to smack into things. So it's great to have a ghost light. But they're called ghost lights because you're supposed to keep them burning all the time to keep the ghosts company and happy, so that you don't have difficult hauntings.
That's pretty cool.
That's right. The ghost light. And I think they're really beautiful. We took a lot of pictures of our empty theater with the ghost light during the pandemic to remind people we were still keeping the light burning, and we were excited to get back into the theater soon.
And we're so glad you all were able to open back up, because there is nothing like seeing a play at the Barter Theatre. It really is a magical experience. Speaking of experiences, you were telling us you had a personal experience with a particular ghost at the theater.
That's right. So this happened in our old production building where we used to rehearse our shows. It's right next to the Barter Inn where we all lived, and it's this big, beautiful old building that used to be a chapel and library and things like that for the Stonewall Jackson School for Girls. It has these great big windows. And we had been told when I first got to Barter, it was very, very important to everyone that you keep the ghost in that building happy. The story about her is that Robert Porterfield actually let her live behind the stage area while they were using the space for a short amount of time as Barter Theatre. When Gregory Peck performed at Barter, he performed actually at the production building. There was a period of time they were performing there. And she had a small room behind the stage. And she lived there and died there and was actually carried out of the building. And when she left, they went in to clean out her things, and she had all of this stuff painted all over her walls. They called them occult symbols, but they were triangles and eyeballs and all this stuff all painted in this room. And we were always told, she won't do anything to you as long as you're there to work. So we were supposed to, if it was after dark, should go into that building and you should announce, I'm here to work, and that she would leave you alone as long as you were working. So it was a really creepy building at night, very creaky, very old building. And so we all said, I'm here to work whenever we come in, just not going to mess around with her. And, I was in the hall sometimes when like things would fall off the walls or things would happen, but, maybe it was just the building being old. But one night it was around midnight and I was directing Arsenic and Old Lace. And it was one of the first main stage shows I had ever directed. So I really, I wanted to do a great job. So I had been there, for hours with all the rehearsal furniture. There was a beautiful pink chaise lounge. There was the other couches and dining room tables and all the things that are in the show. And, I was sort of imagining my people walking around and taking notes and getting ready for the next day's staging. And I was really tired and I was looking down at my script and I looked up and there was a woman reclining in the chaise lounge. She had dark hair, dark eyes. I can still see her face. I looked up, we looked at each other. I looked back down and then I went, wait a second. And I looked up and there wasn't anybody there.
Oh my goodness. That's a great story.
She didn't seem upset. We just looked at each other like, hey, and then, oh my goodness. And there was no one. So I hope it was her. She seemed very at ease in the rehearsal hall.
That's good. You kept her happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Job well done.
That would be creepy, cool, especially when you're alone at night in the building.
Right. I decided at that point maybe I had done enough preparing and I went ahead and got my stuff and left.
Yeah, I would have done the same thing. Although It's pretty cool.
It was cool. It actually wasn't scary. I don't know. That was interesting. The my other sort of favorite production building story was one night, in order to get across the big rehearsal hall, which was really tall and like I said, had great big windows, you had to walk all the way across it in the dark to turn the light on at night. So I was going in to rehearse. And so I'm sort of like feeling my way across the room to get to the light switch. And on the wall behind me, way up in the air, there was like a big metal piece. And there was the moon came out from behind a cloud and came through the windows. And there was someone hanging from the metal bars.
No way.
And very unhelpfully, I screamed and fell to the ground. I don't know how that was going to help anybody. And I crawled across the floor to the light switch, and I just knew someone was dead. And I turned on the light, and I turned around, and sure enough, someone had hung themselves from that bar, but it was a dummy. They were practicing to hang someone in Frankenstein, and they had been practicing on a dummy so they wouldn't actually, practice first with the person. But it scared me to death.
Oh my gosh, that would scare me too.
I did not handle the scare well.
I probably wouldn't either.
No. Scream and run. That's what I would have done.
Yes.
For sure. Yeah. That's what anyone would do in that situation.
But I'm glad it wasn't a real person and a dummy.
Yes. Amen.
Yeah.
Yes.
So are there any more stories you want to share about the resident ghost at the Barter Theatre?
Sure. We have a half a librarian. I think she's pretty cool. She's over at our Smith stage. That's the full story that I know about her, is that she's only half a librarian. And it's never been clarified for me, but I understand. I think it's the top half of her. So she sort of like floats around and her skirt sort of trails around. But I think that's deeply cool that we might have a half a librarian.
That's cool. I've never heard of that before.
I know, me neither. And then I guess the story about the most recent story that I know about the ghost down in the scary room who comes through the tunnel was in the 90s when we were doing a big renovation of the theater, and there were some workers down there, and the Barter and Abingdon are built over all these caverns, and they were working, and you would drop something down to the cavern to see when it would hit, and they would never hear it hit the bottom. It would just go and go and go. It's just huge caverns. Well, they were down in what we call the scary room now, having their 2 a.m. food break, lunch or whatever was at 2 a.m. And these are like big, strong worker guys. And the temperature dropped and they got that terrible feeling and they dropped their lunch bags and they ran out and they found a phone and they called the former artistic director at the time and said, "We will not be going back into your theater. Please come and pay us." So apparently he went over in his jammies and paid them, and they went in and got their lunch bags for them and sent them away and hired new people
That's
later.
pretty spooky.
But lots and lots of stories about people who do not like to be in that room by themselves. Lots of stories about people who just don't want to work in there because of the way that it feels to them. But ghost tours love it.
Yeah. That's where I would want to go if I was doing a ghost tour.
Oh yeah.
I'd probably stay the night down there. Maybe.
Yeah, we have definitely had people spend the night in the scary room. Yeah.
I don't know about that.
Does anyone ever like give up halfway through and they're like, no?
No, the people that want to spend the night in the room love it. They get very excited.
It'd probably be the person like me who gets dragged along. That's like, I don't know if I really want to do this. I need to get out.
Run out.
Right, let me out, please.
Well, Katie, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing all of those spooky ghost stories. But before we let you go, you guys have some really great plays all the time. And currently, you guys have Clue, To Kill a Mockingbird, and Misery. But what do you have coming up for the holidays?
That's right. So Christmas, we will be doing Miracle on 34th Street. It's a beautiful musical adaptation, and we have a set that's a real rotating snow globe that snows inside. It's really beautiful, and there's our professional adult cast, but also just all of these wonderful children that join us for the show, and it's just such a lovely story about Christmas and belief and all of those things. It's just lovely. So that's happening. We're also doing a world premiere called I'll Be Home for Christmas, about a group of people who get stuck in an airport on Christmas Eve, and all about how they sort of build family out of each other. It's really funny. Be the first time anybody's ever seen it. And then for little kids, we're also doing a world premiere called I Want a Hippopotamus for Christmas, which is a brand new musical set at the Cincinnati Zoo with a baby hippo being born. And the hippo puppetry is going to be so great, and just the music and everything. So got some great things going on for the holidays.
And I don't know if you've announced your 2024 season yet, but is there anything you can tell us about that?
We will be announcing next Friday, October 27th. So check us out online and you can see all of the shows that we are going to be doing. The 17 shows we'll be doing in 2024. I'm so excited about these titles.
Can't wait to
I'm
check
excited
that
to
out.
find out what they are.
Me too.
You have to come and see them and take your ghost tour.
Yes.
Definitely.
But Katie, thank you so much for joining us, and we really appreciate you being here.
Those were some amazing stories.
It was great. Thank you all so much for asking about it, and can't wait to see you all inside the theater.
Yeah, thank you, Katie. Thank you so much.
Katie.
So once the curtain falls on the stage and the show is over for the night at the Barter, you can walk directly across the street to the historically charming and also haunted Martha Washington Inn.
Ooh, yeah, it is. The Martha Washington Inn started out as a private residence, built in 1832 for General Francis Preston, his wife Sarah, and their 9 children. It was later purchased from the Preston family in 1858 to turn it into an upscale college for young women. The school was named after the first lady of our great nation, the Martha Washington College.
The college was in operation for over 70 years, including during the Civil War. And as Katie mentioned, the Martha was designated as a hospital for wounded soldiers during the war. And she told us about the tunnel ghost. But there are also some other stories that kind of had origins around the same time during the war that has led to some really intriguing ghost stories there. Some of the young women attending the college at the time decided to stay at the college during the war to work as nurses and help take care of the wounded soldiers coming in. Well, naturally, you have a bunch of women and a bunch of guys, and they're kind of just stuck together. Romances kind of spark
It'll
between
happen,
some
you
of
know?
them.
It usually happens.
And one girl named Beth would play her violin for one of the wounded soldiers.
That's so sweet.
Yankee officer Captain John Stoves. And she would play it to comfort him and help him to go to sleep at night. And the two of them fell deeply in love. But sadly, he didn't make it. Beth was left heartbroken after his death, and not too long after he passed, she ended up dying of typhoid fever.
Some guests still report hearing Beth's violin playing at the Martha till this day, and some report even seeing her in her room 217 where she took care of Captain Stoves. Sweet. She was in love.
It's so sweet, but so sad.
It is sad.
And this next one is like so sad too. Another young romance ended tragically at the Martha when a young Confederate soldier snuck into the Martha to see his sweetheart. He wanted to say goodbye before he left on a dangerous mission.
He was caught by Union officers and he was shot to death. He left a bloodstain behind that keeps reappearing to this day, although throughout the years the floors have been completely redone, recarpeted, but the bloodstain just keeps on coming back. That's pretty spooky. Yeah. Well, he just wanted to tell his woman bye.
That's depressing. But the Martha Washington Inn opened as a hotel in 1935 and has seen many famous guests, such as President Harry Truman, Eleanor Roosevelt, and even the illustrious Elizabeth Taylor.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah. The Martha has kept its historic charm and architectural details. You really feel like you're walking back in time when you're inside there. It's gorgeous. Complete with modern amenities, of course, like Wi-Fi, indoor swimming pool, jacuzzi, a gym, tennis, and pickleball courts. I don't know what pickleball is, but hey. But they have them.
They got them. You can even go get a goodnight glass of fine port wine from 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. at the front desk.
Like, that's so cool. You can just walk up and be like, I want my goodnight wine.
I need night wine. Thank you.
Basically, it sounds like the perfect place to end your spooky date night.
It really does.
And a good place for us to probably wrap up this episode.
Probably.
But I just wanted to say a special thank you again to Katy Brown for speaking with us and sharing some really great stories.
Yes, those stories were amazing, and we can't wait to come to the Barter and check out some plays and maybe do a tour.
Yeah, and they're also announcing their 2024 season today when this episode is dropping. So go over to their social media and see what they're going to be doing next year. Yeah. And also, it's the weekend before Halloween, so let's say Halloween weekend.
Almost
Halloween's on a Tuesday this year, yeah.
Boo. I love when it's on a Saturday.
I do too.
Or even
Friday
a Friday.
Or Saturday. Yeah. But yeah, we would love to see everybody's costumes. So if you want to tag us on social media at Cults, Crimes, and Spirits Pod, we would love to see what you guys dress up as. But yeah, until next time.
Have a good Halloween. Show us your costumes.
Yes. And as always, stay spooky.
Stay spooky. Stay spooky.